Hi, thank you for joining us today on the Odgers-Berndtson One Question Summer Series. My name is Jules McKean and I head up the media practice for the executive search firm Odgers-Berndtson out of London. And today for the summer series, I'm delighted to be joined by Josh Krichefski, who's Global COO and CEO EMEA for MediaCom. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Josh has been at MediaCom for more than a decade in a variety of leadership positions at global, regional and local levels. He's currently both the global COO and the CEO of EMEA, where he's responsible for 4,400 people across 37 offices, driving the vision and culture in EMEA and ensuring that MediaCom is the strongest agency network in the region. Previously, Josh was MediaCom's UK CEO. It's the country's #1 media agency, billing over 1.8 billion across 6 offices. He's not only worked in media agencies, but on the creative agency side too, working at St. Luke's in the early 2000s, and also ran his own digital agency, K-Word. Josh is also the driving force behind the mental health program run by MediaCom, resulting in a network of mental health allies around the world who support the people wherever they need and whenever they need. Josh, it's over to me to ask you our question for summer, which is, in 12 months' time, what is our industry going to be talking about?
Wow, big question. I mean, I think we'll be talking about loads of stuff, as we always do, but I mean, I suppose I'll start with talking about ad spend because, you know, I work at a media agency. That's what we do. We're in quite a buoyant time at the moment. There's double-digit ad spend recovery everywhere in the world right now in 2021. But the UK is performing fantastically as well, and there is also a forecast for a 9% growth in ad spend in 22 on top of where we are right now. So that's, you know, that's a very positive story. A large chunk of that advertising market rebound, especially digitally, is from Chinese-based advertisers of every size. In fact, it's the biggest single chunk of Facebook's growth, and over 60% of the top sellers on Amazon in the big EU markets are Chinese-based sellers. That's pretty crazy, actually. And ad spend concentration, 67% of global ad spend is spent with the top 25 media owners. And most of those media owners are either US or Chinese owned. So that could potentially reduce advertiser and agency leverage. And I think that's something that people should be aware of in our industry. Another thing on the kind of US side of things is that US owned broadcasters will, I'm sure, take an even bigger share of European viewing with Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Disney, all competing really hard with each other. And why is that relevant? Well, not only does that have a big impact on advertising, because many of them don't carry advertising, but also, I think, quite interestingly, it has an impact on culture in the UK and in Europe, because it means there's an increasing American influence as a share of viewing of national broadcasters continues to decline as a result of that growth coming from those streamers. And then I think probably the other point to make about digital ad spend would be that another big spend growth area is from startups.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So tell me more about that.
Well, there's some of the startups at the moment are spending the equivalent of 100% of their revenue in ad spend in VC growth. And actually, one of the upsides of COVID has actually been that many people have reassessed their lives and they've changed their jobs and they've moved out of cities and started new businesses. And as a result, there's been a really big increase in the number of startups in the past year. And next year may be too soon to say, but it'll be interesting to see their impact. You know, it might be that we've got the next wave of unicorns already in development right now. So I think that's kind of quite an interesting development that's happened through COVID. And actually also what's been quite interesting to see, and probably maybe, I don't know if this is surprising to you or not, but one category of startups that's going to be really interesting to watch is the new instant grocery delivery services that are sweeping up huge amounts of VC cash at the moment.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah. Tell us a bit about that, because that is definitely getting the headlines.
Totally. And these guys are starting to spend considerable amounts of money. And so In fact, even within London, so Jeff de Burker, who's our chief strategy officer in the UK at MediaCom, he helped me with some of these insights and stuff that's going on right now. And he was talking about, he lives in Brixton, and he was saying that six of those startups will deliver to him within 20 minutes right now. So he talked about Wheezy, Getir, Gorillas, Jiffy, Deeja, and Zap are all kind of new startup companies that are able to deliver groceries in that short space of time. It's massively exciting, quite transformational. And, obviously Uber and Deliveroo are also in this space, and Tesco and Sainsbury's are testing it as well. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how this one plays out. It's a huge market. So that's kind of a real change. That's happened in the last 18 months. And I think it's going to be something that people are really talking about non-stop for the next few years.
And presumably these startups, are they actually spending most of their budgets on digital, presumably?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I'd say that a lot of them come in, yes and no. So a lot of the time they want to spend in digital to do performance marketing quite quickly because they want to see a return on their investment as soon as possible. But then when they get to a certain critical mass, they want to invest in above the line advertising to try and really grow the brand, because it's a well-known fact that the more you grow the brand, the more you get out of your performance marketing spend. So it's a bit of a combination. But I'd say linked to that question is what I said is quite interesting, is that the proportion of overall advertising spend to go into digital, it won't surprise you that that's continuing to grow. But the figure in the UK in 2020 was 77% of all media spend was digital. So that's crazy. Like the trend, clearly we expect that trend, but 77% figure for me is a really surprising one.
Yeah, particularly when everybody was stuck at home watching the TV, you would have thought that might potentially change things a bit.
I know, exactly.
And so you've painted fairly positive picture there, but there must be a few clouds scudding along the horizon that we might be talking about in a year's time.
I mean, yes, I'd say there is actually. I think, whilst the economy is buoyant right now, most people are starting to, most economic forecasters are starting to talk about inflation. Inflation is rising everywhere. Supply chains are under pressure. The pandemic is lingering much longer than we thought it was going to, and countries that thought they were past it are now having fresh waves. So I think inflation could be the big topic in 12 months' time, if I'm honest. I think it's barely an issue. It's barely been an issue for nearly 20 years now. So I think it may be coming back with a vengeance. And I think we've all forgotten what a world with inflation looks like, but it's tough. Consumer spending goes down. That has kind of a snowball effect on the economy. So I think that could change things quite significantly. So I think it's not all kind of plain sailing, no.
And so what you've touched on, some really big macro themes around the economy and around business and structure of business and how we use human behavior to drive, kind of what startups are going into. But what about sort of societal impacts? So are there any kind of big ticket items that in 12 months' time, being looked at that kind of impact both our industry of media, but also actually people as individuals and humans?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few really. I'll start with the social media giants. So, it was Sunday night, the final of the Euros. It was very disappointing the next day to see all of the racist activity that happened in social media platforms. And I think the social media giants have quite rightly again come under real pressure following that. And I think, that we have to ask the question, will there be more regulation on the social media giants? The UK is consulting on its online harms bill. The EU is flexing its regulatory muscles, and there is some pressure within the USA as well. And I think the pressure is probably most likely, I mean, I don't know this, but I imagine the pressure is most likely to come from the EU because they've previously forced Google and Microsoft to make some big changes. So they might do the same next year, potentially. So I think that would be the first societal area where I think there's going to be some impact. I think the second one is around climate change. So this autumn is the COP Summit. It's the Conference of the Parties Summit, which is the biggest climate conference for 5 years. And I think that as COVID and Brexit hopefully declines in salience, this issue will be rising again. And you know, we've seen already record temperatures in the last few weeks in Canada and Siberia. There's been flooding in various places in the world this week, including the UK, including London, which I can never remember happening before. And yesterday there were dramatic floods in Germany, I saw, and there's also a German election that's happening the week before the conference, where Merkel is stepping down, and the Green Party in Germany are on course to do well enough to get into government potentially. So that could lead to a real shift in focus from the EU's biggest market, and I think that would be really welcome. So I think that's a very interesting societal shift. And then I think probably the final one, and this is really a hope, I think, from my perspective, is I think we've seen an increasing interest over the pandemic in whole self well-being and in the world of business. And one of the few positives of the past 2 years has been the increasing conversation and destigmatization of mental health. And this is something that's quite close to my heart. So if I'm honest, I worry that when we come out of the pandemic and we return to some semblance of normality, that businesses who've started to talk a good game about mental health will start reverting to type and focusing only on the bottom line, and, you know, stop thinking about the well-being of their people. So in the UK, where I live, where we live, I'm campaigning for the UK government to mandate mental health reporting in companies in a similar way to how they are mandating the gender pay gap reporting.
Wow,
so
that's a big move, Josh.
Well, I mean, I really hope we're successful in it. In essence, you know, what I want it to be is a positive exercise where best practice is shared and made easy to access, and where genuine problem businesses or ignorant views are showcased for all to see. Because I think it's really important that we're able to assess not just behaviors within businesses, but actual internal culture. You know, what I suppose I want, and kind of my dream of utopia, is a world where everyone is thriving. And when I think about MediaCom, I think, you know, I want MediaCom to be a place where everybody thrives, and where mental health is focused on, you know, as a solution, not a problem. You know, mental health, people having, you know, positive, good mental health and thriving. And I would love that to be the case across most of British business, because wow, we would be a seriously strong economy if we had that and so that's kind of the idea. And I'm drumming up support from mental health professionals, mental health charities, and some of the most respected organizations in this space. So hopefully, you know, that's why I really hope that I want that to be debated in Parliament at the end of 22. So, you know, that's around about 12 months time. So I hope that's being talked about as well.
Well, you'd like to think that there's, coming out of this pandemic, the fact that people have been able to sort of see inside each other's lives in a way that perhaps they didn't before. And it does feel a little bit, talking to others in this series, that, you know, leaders have tried to let down some of the barriers for themselves in a kind of honesty that, as you say, let's hope they don't chuck out the baby with the bathwater at the end of all this, and that those lessons are learned and they're kind of, you know, put to some good use in the next 12 months.
Exactly.
Josh Krichefski, thank you so much for joining us. Loads to cover there, from the economic to the political to the personal, and you know, let's come back in 12 months and hope that your bill's on the table.
I'd love that. I really hope so. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Cheers.